Chapter 1, Foundation of Life. Immigration to the United States of America, City of Louisville, State of Kentucky. In early March of 1995, my family of 7, including my parents, my 2 sisters, a cousin, and his wife landed in Louisville, Kentucky, in the United States of America. We, Vietnamese immigrants, often used the abbreviation USA, since we could not pronounce the full 3-word name. "Freedom is here," my mom said softly to my dad. I could clearly hear her from 2 seats away on the airplane. A sense of relief showed clearly on her face after takeoff and while she napped on the 15-plus-hour flight, which took us from Vietnam to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong to Chicago, Illinois. We escaped Vietnam, the only place we had ever lived and known as home, and landed in a dreamland that we knew very little about. What my parents knew was that we needed to be out of the communist regime and move elsewhere to a place with a more promising future, especially for their children and cousins. Our new generation had to be built on steadier ground, and that ground was freedom. Most people have their own definition of the term freedom, and it is often relative, but frequently starts with the country's government. Only 15 to 20 hours away. As the Vietnamese people know, the USA is the land of opportunity, on which lies a solid freedom foundation. It is the country that sets the gold standard for all other countries to mimic. At the age of 12, I boarded an airplane for the first time on a flight to America. Looking back on the experience now, it should have been a very cool experience for me, but I could not think about that. The situation had been highly stressful for our family, and I recall the anxiety building for the week prior to the flight. I had watched my parents, especially my mom, prepare for the trip. She coordinated all activities, such as selling the house, running the existing businesses, and taking an English prep course at home taught by an English tutor who had traveled to the U.S. for international study. She packed items for our basic needs, including bowls, plates, and spoons, taught each one of us to act respectfully to all Vietnamese government agency personnel, taught us to be calm in all situations, and most importantly reminded us to pray. These are minimal things, but I only saw her for a few short hours daily the week before the flight. She ran the show end to end, at least that's how I simplified the experience for my own understanding and memories up to this point. Our hometown in Vietnam, my origins. I vaguely remember that the process for our move to America started 2 to 3 years before March 1995. My family is small compared to many families in our small village of Phuong Lam in the Tan Phu district of Dong Nai City in Vietnam. We have only 5 people in our immediate family, which includes my mother, father, older sister, younger sister, and me. My dad barely completed 3rd grade, and my mom almost completed the 12th grade when she was young, but it was not until later in life that she completed her high school education. Whenever we had dinner together, either in my grandparents' mud hut that we often used as the multi-family kitchen or the later houses built with bricks and stones on the main street of our district, my mom would tell us the stories of our family that went way back 1, 2, or 3 generations. One story she told repeatedly was about her grandparents and my great-grandparents, who migrated from North Vietnam down to the south to seek a new life. Then her parents, my grandparents, sought land in Phuong Lam, a very small village that was a 45-minute walk or 15-minute scooter ride to the main street or flea market area of the village. My grandparents decided to build their new home away from North Vietnam. This is also where I would be born later. My family 2 to 3 generations back, as related by my mom, had always been farmers. Some knew how to read Vietnamese, and some did not. Schools existed, but in a very limited capacity as they cost money and tuition had to be privately paid by the family. To save and make money, most families in the village had a lot of kids. This was primarily for reasons of having a buffer, as they expected that some children would die. Another reason was to create a workforce in the family to help with the farming. More kids also meant that they would take care of each other while the parents were away planting and tending to the farmland. The family that I refer to is our extended family that includes our grandparents, 4 aunts, my mom's sisters, 1 uncle, my mom's brother, my parents, my 2 sisters, and me. We all lived together in a single home until we were able to make enough money, and my parents bought a piece of land next door and built a home for our immediate family. In Vietnam, extended families often function as one unit, quite close. We were poor, as were most others who lived in the same village. Farming was all we knew, going back to all past generations. This was viewed as the only means for us to make a living. Vietnam is known to have the best rice and is one of the top 5 largest rice-producing countries in the world today. Therefore, this was our family's main crop, wet rice, grown on wet flooded land with lots of water. Our extended family rented rice fields on which to plant rice for years. All family members started their day at 7 a.m. and worked until 6 p.m. in the rice fields. There was often an additional hour of walking to and from home. And so, that describes our life for many years before I was born. The others that matter the most to me, my mom. I was born in 1982, a crying and fussy baby boy that the family had been hoping to have. Asian culture valued boys more than girls, and even though it has now changed a little, favoritism toward boys still exists. My family was happy, but I was not a super healthy boy. I had sicknesses and tended to be weaker than most newborns. I cried and demanded my mom's attention more than other children in the family, according to my mother. However, as a result of my needs, the family lost my mom as a worker in the rice field, and she had been an excellent farmer. For 1 full year, my mom put her work aside to stay at home with me. As told by my mom, I was the only child that she had to spend a lot more time with, and so it was at this stage in her life that everything in our generational way of living began to change. During her first year of taking care of her newborn son, my mom realized several important facts about her accustomed way of life. She recognized that her family only knew how to farm, and that she should have a lot of children to become the family's workforce. Children were expected to go to school long enough to learn to read, they would receive a basic level of education, and that would be sufficient. The only significant life event and note in these typical lives of my extended family was that one of my aunts, my mom's second youngest sister, fled Vietnam for Germany before I was born. This aunt occasionally, once a year, mailed our extended family boxes of goods from Germany. These gift boxes would include clothes, candies, and many other items that we surely did not have in Vietnam, nor did we have the money for such extravagances. These were rare Western goods that could only be purchased from family members who had fled Vietnam and sent goods back from afar. These gifts would have been quite significant for any family, and they surely were for us in 1982. My mom had a breakthrough thought during her time as a stay-at-home mom, a rare occurrence in our village. We were dirt poor, as were all of the inhabitants of the village, many of whom had migrated from North Vietnam. It was understood that the entire workforce must contribute to farming the rice fields in order to make a living. Again, that breakthrough moment sparked something in my mom as she retells this story over and over for us children and my dad. This is the primary image of my mom and the others in my life. It starts here. This image of her is the main reason that I became who I am today. Sometime during 1982 after I was born, sometime during her 10 months as a stay-at-home mom for me as a baby, my mom thought of doing sales rather than continuing the tradition of rice farming. I would not understand how out of the box and risky this decision was, considering our family had only farmed for all of the generations that we knew of. This was preposterous. She told us her prayer, "God, I don't want to be poor anymore. More importantly, I do not want my children to continue this life with the hardships I have experienced. I expect more for my family and beyond. So, help me, God." She retold her life story to us and often with Dad at the dinner table. "God, no more farming for me. I want to be out there making sales and seeking something much different to change our fate." So, with great trepidation, this dream led my mother to act on her faith and belief that she could succeed. Who would have thought a tiny woman weighing less than 100 pounds and under 5 feet high would dare to make such a radical decision as to do something no one in multi-generations of family had ever done before? Sales? I did not have any money. No savings, no pocket change, no connections, no help, and no support from the family, Mom recounted on many occasions. What I knew deep in my heart is you, my children, had to have a changed life totally different from my own. She believes in God deeply and has profound faith. This kept her moving toward that unknown path with courage, although not yet with confidence. Courage is defined as being afraid, but you do it anyway for the right reason. Yes, with God and faith, then why not do it? I just walked to the flea market and started studying and figuring out ways to make money. As I imagine how my mom tried to figure her way out through launching her own business, which most of us call a startup today, I realized that 100% of what she did still applies today. Although not all her techniques are applied today, the majority of people that I know in small business startups use similar methods. This is the reason not everyone can do what she did, successfully launched most of her businesses. She called it God blesses for every business that she launched, and her techniques are still being successfully utilized by her and me every day. Startup lesson number 1 is to understand your customers by understanding their demands. This often goes in tandem with understanding the supplies in connection to the demand. Understanding the others, mom's advice, lessons in startups. When you have nothing to start with, you will come back to the base of human nature, the human need, I call it the other's needs. Son, I didn't have any money to start buying products or to start any trade. Without the launching capital, I didn't know how to start selling, she elaborated to me more than once at many dinners throughout my life. Interestingly, as I listened to her story and started to fully comprehend each time the same story was retold, I unintentionally figured out the fundamental steps of launching a business. What you have is yourself and your intention of what you want to do. What I wanted to do was reach my goal of making more money to make sure you, my children, would be better provided for and equipped for life. She emphasized that that was her end goal. She knew her goal clearly and set her target with laser focus. What she did not have was the plan to get there. She was new to the sales business, most would call her fresh off the boat in our community of immigrants. This refers to people like us, Vietnamese immigrants who fled the communist regime after the fall of Saigon in 1975, using small boats to cross the ocean, seeking freedom. As fresh off the boat as my mom was, she put herself in the flea market empty-handed. I walked up and down the flea market watching people for days, she recalled. What she did was try to learn the behavior of the two types of people at the flea market. One was the shop/booth owner or the product seller, and the other was the customer. Son, be the go-giver and come with that mentality, she said. What I now understand many years later is trying to understand the people's needs and what value you can add to that need. Startups begin with the go-getter mentality, as I learned through my own startup experience. Go-getter, in my definition, means putting yourself out to acquire what you can and what you believe you deserve. Go-giver means to put yourself out to provide and add value to others without thinking of an immediate return. Interestingly, we need to be both go-getters and go-givers in a startup organization or company. The key question is, which order do we use to execute each? For my mom, it was go-giver first. It was optional for me to pick. It has to be go-giver first at all times, mom confirmed. As a starter, you typically do not have any value to give, and even if you do not know how or the best way to give that would result in the best results for others. Understanding the others is the best value add, especially when you do not have anything with which to start. So, that was what my mom spent days doing. She walked through the flea markets, even in the rain. I was walking because I did not have any other choices, nor did I know what else to do. I was walking because I was frustrated with life and how poor we were, mom elaborated. She walked through the flea market with caring thoughts of her children while trying to learn how customers react to the sellers and vice versa. Interestingly, what I found was there was a lack of care involved in business at the flea markets, she said. Everyone was a go-getter at the market. The customer wants to go get their merchandise in the most affordable way possible, while the seller wants to go get as much profit as possible from the customers. Not much go-giving was shown to the needs of either population, and so there were often no deals between the two. Most of the flea market shops sell a certain quantity that is often too big and too expensive for the customers, when what the customer needs is a customizable size and quantity with a variety of options for other products. A pork shop sells half kilograms or 1/4 kilograms, but customers often want only 1/10, mom continued. Some customers want fat only, some want only skin, some want only muscle, and some want 3-layered meats like pork belly, but in small quantities. Being flexible and aligned with the on-demand needs of the customers is the key to successful sales. Flexibility requires continual change and adaptation to the customer's needs, and that is often difficult. Systematically thinking and working through the customer's needs with care is what I noticed was lacking at the flea market. So, she thought she would find ways to solve this dilemma, adding value to both customers and sellers. There was a lack of care and empathy in the business deals at the flea market, and my mom thought of implementing that. Caring for others is the next step, after understanding who they are. How can I give better care to both the customer and the seller through these trade deals, she asked herself. Customers want packages of most items in small quantities and at agreeable prices that were not available at the time. Each booth or shop sells only specific items, such as meat, vegetables, grains, or fish. She decided to talk to each seller to determine what the customers most needed in categories of products, often visiting booths that had the fewest customer visits. If I sell your product at your desired or discounted price, since no one buys them anyway, I want your ongoing business to be with me and with me only. They agreed with her, and she had found the key. Mom had discovered a product to sell. She focused on others' needs and distributed her value in the form of proposals. She received verbal contracts with the potential suppliers. She then determined her next step: she must nail down her potential customers. What does my customer need that is currently not being fulfilled by existing vendors? Mom wondered. What I did was not guess, even when I kind of had a vague idea of the answer, she told us. Again, she walked up and down the flea market, making sales on her potential products that she did not yet have. I told customers that I had a package of fresh vegetables, meat, and fish that they could customize in quantities and options. Her customers had the option to choose the combination of goods based on the goods she had available. This type of packaging deal had not previously existed in the flea market. Interestingly, this variety package of goods cost more, often significantly more, than the same quantity if purchased separately. This customization and packaging proposal offered convenience along with a caregiving sell from Mom. People loved the idea and signed up to buy. Some customers liked her so much that they paid up front to lock down the package. Mom's startup launched and she began to sell even before she had any products. Was it your sales ability or was it the product that enabled you to sell so much, Mom? I asked. It was both, son. It is the care that I showed others by meeting their exact needs with a solution that I came up with for those specific needs. I studied and thought hard through this simple answer throughout my years as a small business owner. So, Mom cared about the seller making the sale, while the others did not. Therefore, any proposal to make a sale to the seller would be accepted by them, even at a discount. For the customers, it was about obtaining the variety of needed goods so they could go home quickly. Now, I call it convenience. Customers are often willing to pay extra to save time at the market. Son, but the glue to all these deals is being true with your care. I do not lie to my customers and deliver on my promise with the final package of product, she continued. For each package she delivered to customers, she tended to give them a bit extra, and they liked it. Mom's bright, confident, and firm attitude provided confidence and built trust with both the suppliers and customers. Therefore, her business launched without even having her own booth or real estate. The lesson I learn each time Mom retells the story, yes, over and over, is that she truly cared for her customers and her business partners. She developed a win-win condition for every single deal she made. Everyone who walks away from any business deal or meeting with me should be happy and feel that they have been pleasantly treated. More importantly, they walk away with something that they believe was a good deal. The secret about not caring for others. Do you know why vendors next to me and my booth sell the same thing, but rarely have any customers? Mom asked me and my siblings on another occasion. Mom started her business 10 months after giving birth to me when she was forced to be a stay-at-home mom because I was a difficult baby to care for. As I grew and started to understand more, after the age of 7, I was allowed to visit Mom at her booth at the flea market. What I noticed was out of many booths selling the same thing she did, hers was the only one filled with customers. They were happily chatting and sometimes literally fighting to pick, choose, and buy her products. This was after 6 or more years that she had been in business. By this time, she had scaled up the business on many levels, and she dominated the flea market, where everyone knew her by name. The reason that everyone loves me is I always stay true to myself and tell my customers as it is. I never lie about the effectiveness or goodness of the product, nor do I exaggerate about anything I sell. Consistency proves reality, son. What she meant to say to me back then, and what means a lot to me now, is that anything you do consistently is real, and it represents you. If you are true to yourself and your product, then consistency of truth develops, and you maintain trust with others. If you are not being true or occasionally lie, lack of truth will destroy the faith that others have in you. Trade of value is business, and business does not last nor does it repeat without consistency in truth delivered and received. Understand? That is what she referred to as caring for others, but at the same time, caring for oneself. When you lie, son, you actually lie to yourself first, no one else, and that is destructive to your own good, even before anyone else is hurt. She also affirmed that if you hurt others, you will not maintain a business. Business is and always will be about win-win. Nothing exists as failure, rather, it is a lesson in the form of hardship. Interestingly, Mom never used the term failure in her conversations with us as children or with anyone else, as far as we can remember. There was always the next thing, then the next thing, then the next project. There is hardship, and she does say this often. Hardship exists all the time. We are always a baby in every new thing we encounter and must face. As humans react to new things, that thing will always be a hardship in our eyes. I learned from her that hardship is the word we use to explain our emotions and feelings of not wanting to deal with change. Humans are weak by nature, and we often like to set ourselves back safely instead of tackling new things. You do things, and when you do something that ends with a result that you think you do not want is what some call failure. Undesirable results is how most would define failure. That is the reason Mom emphasized the term you think in an undesirable result. However, that simply means you may need to change your way of doing things to create a result that fits you. Faith in God. What you cannot get often means it does not belong to you, and there can be many reasons for this, Mom explained. She always taught us that if you cannot achieve a certain desirable result, it means only one of two things. One is that you are not ready or capable of handling it, and the second is that the result might not be appropriate for you even if you do get it. The first reason means that you need to strengthen your capabilities as an individual or business. In the second reason, you should pick a different method, choice, or product for your personal or business needs, otherwise, it will only land you in a worse place. This may sound far-fetched, because it means you have faith in something that is unknown. Son, everything in life is unknown, even when you have already done it once or many times. Nothing guarantees the same result again. What I will tell you is there must be something that you keep to stand solid and strong in any condition, and that is faith in God. I have learned that one may teach you to believe in yourself, but humans are weak, especially in the United States where individualism is emphasized. I have tried many times and faith in oneself is not sustainable and consistent, because human beings are inconsistent. Faith in God is more solid and dependable. Faith in God is not to tell yourself that we have a reason to blame someone or make excuses, it is to tell ourselves that God has a plan for us, Mom explained. God never gives anyone more than we can handle, a burden is always bearable when it comes to you. If that were not the case, it would not land in your lap. So, undesirable results that we call failures are often the burdens that are not for you to bear, or the burden that you are not yet ready to bear. I now understand that it might be a burden, which requires you to strengthen up and prepare for it before the next time it reappears. Every pot has its own perfect lid. In Vietnamese culture, there is a saying, "Noi nao ap vong nay." An exact translation to English would be, every pot has its own perfect lid. An equivalent English saying would be, every Jack has his Jill. The other who also very important to me is my dad. He is the Jack to my mom's Jill. As I think hard about my life aspirations, no doubt, my mom is my number and only idol. She is the person I aspire to meet or even surpass in career, business, and life. You will notice my reverence for her as you flip through each page of this book. But this section is about my dad. He is the one who provides me with a totally different outlook, image, and perspective on life that I would not have been able to learn elsewhere, my dear dad. Through my mom's stories to her children, and most often in the presence of my dad, he was often talked down to and made fun of. He accepted this like a man. At the end of the day, he understands that it is his wife whom I respected as I grew and began to understand life as the only son in the house. Mom used all her life stories regarding hardships, most of which took place with Dad, her life partner for over 40 years, to teach us children. Marriage is not rosy, son, but you have to recognize it as a blessing and a miracle for you to accept and treat it as such, Mom taught her children while Dad listened. I learned from her that you always have a choice, but she loved my dad, and he loved her as well. Your dad and I have beaten each other up literally, verbally, and mentally almost daily throughout our lives. But let me tell you, if anyone else in the world does the same thing to either one of us, there will be hell to pay from both of us, she confirmed. Growing up as the only son, I learned about masculinity, of course, directly from Dad, both the great and the not so great aspects. Regardless, life would not be holistic without all these attributes, and from him I learned to be whole in many ways. I recognize very clearly that every pot has its own perfect lid, as I witnessed the marriage of my parents. I learned the reality of life, the hardships, the falls, the crawls, the slow stand ups after the fall, and finally, standing tall once you reach a certain goal after hard work, just by watching my parents work together, often without the best coordination or harmony. In a third world country like Vietnam, especially in the poor countryside of such a country, class levels are very distinguishable. There are the rich, the educated, the trade/business owners, and there are the labor workers, often farmers. These specific classes are not necessarily given exact names or referred to as rich, poor, and middle class. Dad and Mom were both from poor families when they met each other. What set them apart was primarily their mindset. Neither confirmed by Mom or denied by Dad, it had everything to do with their education. Mom finished 12 grades in the educational system dominated by the French in Saigon, one of the two largest cities in Vietnam, before 1975. At that time, her family moved to the poor countryside, where Dad's family had always lived. Son, the French education in Vietnam before 1975 was just as good as the US education you receive here now. She is proud of the knowledge she gained from the French-influenced educational system, and sometimes gives her education credit for who she is today. Your dad went to school just long enough to learn how to read. Even his writing is bad. But I loved him for his physique, Mom continued with a smile. Both of my parents were generationally Catholic believers. Phuong Lam, Dong Nale district of Vietnam is a Catholic village district, where both my parents' families resided. Catholic Church is also where they met each other. Mom was young, only 20, and had just recently immigrated to the poor countryside from Saigon when she met Dad. How to act like a woman. Mom often described herself as cute, slender, less than 100 pounds, and less than 5 feet tall. I was small, but quite stubborn and fearless, she recalled. Being confident as a city girl gave me courage that even the boys in the village did not have. That was one reason that she was quite attractive to the young men in the area. Many followed me and tried to date me, but I did not give any of them a chance. I was the type of woman who did what she wanted, and I only dated the ones I pursued, not the other way around, she confidently shared. Mom often looks at my two sisters when sharing this part of the story, in a way of teaching them how women should act. The less you want them, the more they hang on to you, she said, referring to the men in her village and across other villages. But until I met your dad, no one met my standards. He was handsome, yes, and most importantly taller than standard Vietnamese men. Even though I am short, I had to have a tall man, she stated. She knew her taste, and tall and good-looking were her main criteria, so she searched for these characteristics. I learned that her standards were not off track from what was needed for survival at that time and during her life. The majority of people in the village were farmers, and masculinity made sense to her. She was looking for a muscular man who could handle the work. Education was not emphasized nor highly recognized as a needed element at that stage in her life, and she did not care much about those qualities at the time. Mom met Dad, and they were immediately attracted to each other. Dad was one of the rare men who had such a physique. Your dad does Olympic-style bar pull-ups and weightlifting often, so he looks good, Mom shared while smiling. I wanted a tall and good-looking man, because I knew I wanted to have beautiful children who were taller than me. That's why I have you 3 beautiful children, she said. She set her goals and acted upon them, and miracles happened. Of course, all of these are our own standards, and especially my mom's, but thanks to my dad, my sisters, and I inherited the tall and beautiful physical combination of both parents. But best, you all get my brain genes, she often shared with Dad. This is also the lesson I learned and comprehended on a deeper level later in life. Every pot has its own perfect lid is up to interpretation and acceptance from each one of us. Mom got what she wanted, a physical and masculine man, but he did not have the mindset that often comes with education and knowledge that she needed to work with her through life. Every business idea that I shared with your dad would turn out to be a fighting match, because he always said no. I always ended up doing everything myself, and then we would fight some more because I did it. Dad and Mom have 2 totally different frequencies in thinking. Mom is a business-centric woman, always thinking forward and surely taking risks. She is also confident and acts super quickly in drawing her conclusions about everything in life, especially business. Dad is hesitant and unsure about most things, therefore, settling on a responsive no in most matters is an easy solution. Watching these 2 different types of individuals beating each other up on all levels to produce children like us and create a family like ours is rather amazing, and I would call it a miracle. Age magnifies you and what you do, it doesn't change you. Mom led and continues to lead all aspects of our family through teaching us children to handle business deals, discover new ventures, and seek new partners, even though she is now over 60 years of age. I learned that she succeeded in everything she did or wanted to do when she was young, and she is doing a lot more now at this older age. The same is true with Dad, as he resorts back to no and most challenges and continues to do so even more as he ages. Dad needs a feeling of safety, and Mom requires excitement, continuing to seek bigger projects and businesses. Son, age doesn't change you, nor will you change. Look at me and your dad. Mindset, son. Mindset is the biggest thing in life for you. Having the wrong mindset will set you back, while having the right mindset will propel you forward. And no one can stop you from having this, Mom taught us. Different mindsets have made your dad and me fight like cats and dogs for the last many years. I grew up watching this happen firsthand. What I also recognized was what everyone would always expect them to split up, especially in the US. Let's divorce, they would say to each other when they were angry, but after a day, it was business as usual. I heard this statement hundreds of times. Their focus then returned to their family business, the family, their children, and each other. For some reason, they never took any of this personally, or maybe they did, but they never stayed away from each other longer than a week. Mom often brought home fertilized duck eggs, a special Vietnamese dish, to Dad and the family after these fights. Mom and Dad are quite frugal, so she often bought the rotten, stinky eggs to save money, but Dad loved the gift anyway. So, is it the tradition, the love, the class matching, or the acceptance of each other that keeps my parents together? I ask them this whenever the story is retold. Life is not rosy, nor will marriage ever be. We live to add value to life, or in our Catholic religion, we believe that we live to pay back for our sins, Mom stated, confirming her Catholic faith. But that is faith, son. Scientifically, I am not sure I have an answer, but I simply know this family is mine and your dad's to protect. So, we have done that and continue to do so. I can tell you one thing for sure, son, and that is your dad is a good man and a man. Your dad never cheats on me. For me, that's masculinity. I might also be the best girl that he has ever met, Mom shared. Through this experience, I learned that as imperfect an individual as my dad is, it does not make him less of a man, and a man is what my mom needs. Mom was Dad's only, and that seems to be enough to roll with life's challenges, and they have done exactly that. A man's most significant form of masculinity shows through what he does for his family, and that is often enough, Mom confirmed. This was a very important aha moment for me. This is on par with the Asian culture that I grew up understanding. We do not complement each other. We fight and we can be our real selves among family. We then get back to real life, living and hustling together for necessary survival. Neither Mom nor Dad ever says I love you to each other, and only rarely say a kind word to each other. What I have noticed is that they do things together, and this is what I have concluded: continue to do things together. Son, feelings mean a lot. When life hits you with real challenges, that's when it hurts. But each time there is a challenge, your dad is with me. Every single time he says no and fights with me, we end up doing things anyway because I persist. We know how to complement each other. He's indecisive, that's why I make decisions. I am very enthusiastic about most business deals, and maybe I need your dad to slow me down at times. However, most of the time, Dad can never stop Mom in what she does, because what I do is always for this family, not for myself. So, no one can stop me. Being around as a dad is enough. You have read this far about my dad, and some of you might still be thinking that I am promoting my mother over Dad, which I do all the time. You might also have thoughts about the ways my mom treats Dad and vice versa, which are also questionable. But some aspects of life provide the key to building and holding a family together, and I have learned this through my dad's life with Mom. I know he is part of the glue that holds my family strong and the masculinity that I learn to replicate every day. These characteristics include many issues, but end up with one major factor, which is being around the family. Dad is simple, frugal, and lives an acceptable life that he decided upon with Mom and our family. Regardless of how often he responds no and fights with Mom, he is the masculine figure that is around Mom and his children all the time. Son, being around your family is a big contribution you can make for your family. A weak man would have already left. A weak man gives up. A weak man seeks life satisfaction outside of this family. Your dad is here. This is my takeaway. The basic qualities I learned from my dad are not earth-shattering. I learned that simply being around may be all that matters. I nag your dad. I fight with your dad. I talk down to him. But in every phase of life, I am taking care of you and this family, and he is walking along. There are many times that I conduct business deals in the middle of the night. Who do you think is there to scooter me around? Your dad. Of course, he nags me on the way. But that's the safety. I need to do what I need to do. For Mom, this is the perfect lid on the perfect pot. She believes that she and Dad are not a perfect match, but they are. Immigration to the United States of America, City of Louisville, State of Kentucky. In March 1995, our family landed in Louisville, Kentucky from a flight originating in Saigon, Vietnam, and going through Hong Kong and Chicago. Everything was an initial adventure for our family of 7 members. It was the first time any of us had ever been on an airplane, much less 3 different planes. We had never really known what a hotel was, but we were stuck for one night in Hong Kong and got to experience a beautiful hotel that provided us a table full of delicious foods. Landing in Louisville, Kentucky in early March, we experienced the first snowfall we had ever seen. It was the last snowstorm for the winter season in 1995. I remember standing outside under the sky after leaving the airport, surprised and amazed at the snow. I opened my mouth, closed my eyes, and tasted the snow as it fell on my tongue. As an immigrant, one must have a sponsor in the United States to be allowed entrance into the country. Kentucky is one of many states with a branch of Catholic Charities, a non-profit organization that conducts such sponsorship. As I learned in 1995, Louisville, Kentucky was one of the main locations where people like us, Vietnamese immigrants, were being sponsored. So that is why our family, like so many other immigrants, landed in Louisville. Our family of 7 each arrived in America with 2 pairs of pants and 2 shirts, along with a package of kitchen daily usage tools such as a pot, pans, bowl, and spoons. We were notified in English, a language none of us understood, that our package had been lost, so we landed in America completely empty-handed. As a family, we were lost, confused, and speechless. If it had not been for our faith in God that had taken us to this point, we would have had nothing to lean on. Meeting a Bosnian for the first time. Our family was taken from Louisville International Airport to a single-family home, which had 2 floors. The first floor was taken and used by another immigrant family who had arrived before us. They were a Bosnian family. For the first time in our lives, we encountered another ethnicity, and more interestingly, we lived together under one roof. The house had a shared kitchen with a refrigerator, so we shared storage space for our food. Within 1 week, our family interacted with more ethnicities than we ever thought we would in our lifetime. This included people from Hong Kong, America, and Bosnia. Unfortunately, we could not communicate with any of them. That's when we learned that our body language, facial expressions, and hand gestures would be the key to our new lives in America, at least for the time being. Basic survival techniques naturally kicked into gear. The Bosnian family members smiled at us, and, of course, we reciprocated. Friendliness is simple and can be shared and conducted among all human beings. We had $500 in cash and a few hundred in food stamps. Our family was given $500 in welfare and a few $100s in food stamps. We have exactly $200, which we had exchanged from Vietnamese dong Mom shared with the family when we got on the airplane to America. So, at that time, we have around $700 in food stamps for 7 people in this new land we would call our home. Scary would be an understatement. The stress was overwhelming. At the age of 12, I did not fully comprehend how critical our situation was, but I later learned this from my parents. How will we find work? How will we survive? Where will my children sleep? What will my children sleep on? These were the questions that repeatedly ran through my mind, Mom said as she described the situation. As I relive the experience through my mom's stories of the time when we first arrived in America, I am amazed at her mental and physical strength, and the masculinity that my dad provided by being around and supporting the family and my mother. Dad was mostly quiet, nevertheless, he was strongly present. A key moment for me: Dad and the leftover cigarette butts on the sidewalk. My dad was a tobacco smoker for as long as anyone could remember. For all the achievements in business that Mom and Dad built over more than 10 years in Vietnam, starting 10 months after my birth, Dad always enjoyed the luxury of smoking tobacco. On average, he used to smoke up to 3 packs a day of the good, strong, luxury brands of cigarettes, such as Yes and the British 555 cigarettes. Coming to America, and with limited cash on hand for the family, I had to suck it up and fight the addiction to cigarettes, which was so uncomfortable, Dad shared. At the age of 12 at the time, I remember watching Dad through the window of our shared house with the Bosnians, as he walked down the sidewalk on 3rd Street around the University of Louisville across from the Catholic Charity Center. Dad walked up and down seeking cigarette butts that he might find on the street to smoke. He did this to feed his tobacco addiction problem. The real man he is was visible. He never asked for money to buy cigarettes at the time. To me, his masculinity was shown at this moment. He put his family first and his tobacco addiction second. Poor origins. We grew up under great care and were well loved by the family and especially Mom, although we lived in destitute conditions. We lived in the poor countryside with limited access to all material goods and food. Your dad had only one pair of pants, and they were ripped. So, he had to patch them to wear during the day to farm. He would wash them at night and wear them again in the morning. Mom shared with the children. Son, we only had around 3 small pieces of triangular cloth that we used to wrap you in for diapers when you were young, Mom continued. It was fun dealing with your poo on those rag cloths, Dad added to Mom's story and smiled. We didn't have the white rice that we now eat every day. We had to resort to corn, sweet potatoes, and cassava roots that we planted around our house, Dad continued. Having rice to cook congee was a luxury to us, let alone meat or fish, which we rarely had, Mom confirmed. We lacked almost everything for our basic living, and money was a rare commodity during those times around 1980. Children love sweets, and I remember I had the same craving. Candy did not exist in my world, but I knew that there was a very small pot of sugar that my grandmother had. She used it for cooking. Sneaking into the kitchen to have a taste here and there provided me an exciting moment in my day. I was fortunate to also be fed by the best cook there is, and being the only baby boy in the family, I surely received special treatment. I knew we were, but never felt poor, mainly because of the overload of love in the family. All I remember is we lived, we hustled, and we worked very hard, then we happily gathered around each other every night after a long day. Our breakfasts and dinners were quite simple, often consisting of a very small pot of white rice, a small pan of Vietnamese water spinach, and a small bowl of fish sauce on the best days. On a regular day, we often had sweet potatoes and corn on the cob along with some cucumbers and vegetables from our home garden. I don't remember having lunch together unless I visited the farm with my uncle occasionally. Talk about simplicity in life, that is the level of simplicity we lived through, but we were very happy. God blesses, son. We lived through that. What is there to complain about now, son? Mom continued, referring to our life in United States today. Another key moment, dumpster diving with MOM. Thanks to Catholic Charities, our family had a roof over our heads for the first month after we immigrated to Louisville. From what we understood, it was mostly newly immigrated families that stayed in this house, often sharing it with another family of new immigrants. In our case, we shared the house with a Bosnian family. It was for the purpose of being close to the Catholic Charities office, where the nonprofit community worker could easily help the immigrants who were close to their office. For the first month in American, as an immigrant family speaking no English, with the assistance of a Vietnamese translator, we were able to complete all formalities. These included filling out all of the federal, state, and city immigration papers, making plans of where to live permanently, and creating an employment development plan. The majority of all immigrants, especially the Vietnamese, were moved from the temporary shelter after 1 month or less to the Americana apartments on Southside Drive in Louisville, in the Beachmont and Iroquois Park neighborhoods. That's what happened to our family. Our family had moved into a fully equipped temporary house that included amenities, such as a refrigerator with stocked food, beds with old mattresses, and, of course, blankets to use. After a month, each family had to relocate to a new home. For us, it was 146 Southland Boulevard in Louisville, in the Americana apartments. Our second new home was equipped with nothing except a refrigerator and gas stove. The move took place in March 1995 when the weather was still wintry and cold. I was worried for our family that we wouldn't have a mattress to sleep on in the new apartment, especially during the winter. I knew I could not let you three kids sleep on the floor and get sick. Our entire family of 7 had only a few $100s and some food stamps. I called that our livelihood budget, and each of us probably had 2 pairs of tropical thin clothes. What did I put my family into? Mom began to question herself about moving to the US, referring to the stage of her life and family in Vietnam before the move to America. Vietnam before moving to the United States. After years of work, in 1982, my parents managed to build a solid wholesale business of fertilizer and pesticides with 4 different branches. After doing sales of almost everything that there is available to sell in the market, your dad and I got into the fertilizer business, Mom explained. Considering farming is the only thing that most people do in our village, the business of fertilizer and pesticide is an integral part of the equation. Zoned down to the need, and the biggest need of the villages where we were was fertilizer. Using all the networks of people, government agencies, and a customer base that we had accumulated over the years, your dad and I rose to the top of the fertilizer business in our area. We did some retail, but mainly wholesale, and that's when you and your sisters started to notice an increase in real estate and businesses that we had. Mom shared this with us, explaining our situation as new immigrants during the first month so we children could understand how different things were. I felt once again the same low that we faced when our family only knew how to farm. Poor, poor, poor son. And I promised God that I would not allow my kids to be in same situation as I had been in, but then, there we were again. I have always been confident about seeking freedom for our family. I always knew that God was watching us every step of our way. But none of this could stop me from feeling hopeless, Mom continues. She was deeply concerned about our living in a small 500 square foot apartment, considering that it was very cold, and we had no mattresses or blankets. We knew no one in Louisville, and we could not talk to anyone in English. All we had was a Catholic Charities Vietnamese translator. Talk about vulnerability. That was the maximum risk at all levels that I had ever put our family through, and I was responsible for all this madness, she said as she explained her stress to us. She second-guessed herself on all levels. I walked around the neighborhood of the temporary house that we lived in next to Catholic Charities in the cold with some light, wet snow falling, and I imagined the same feeling I had when I walked in the rain, frustrated about how poor we were in 1982 after giving birth to you, son. Then I walked past a few dumpsters, and I noticed an old table, chairs, and a discarded dirty mattress. Mom spoke with light in her eyes, and this is where my own career momentum began. Without hesitation, she walked back to the temporary apartment and got me. I immediately came back and got you, son, to come back with me to be another helping hand to get that mattress. You were 12 years of age, small, but you were the only one I could take with me to the dumpsters. Why? Why me and not Dad? I asked. I knew your dad wouldn't do this, because he had lived a luxurious life in Vietnam before we came to America. It would be shameful to him if anyone knew that the American dream for him was to dig through the dumpsters. I also knew for sure that it could not be your sisters, even though your older sister is bigger than either of us. Unmarried daughters cannot go through such things. It would damage their reputation, and no man would look at them. She continued to describe the beliefs and customs of Vietnamese women, and how they should be well cared for before they are married. But you, son, a boy, can do all this with me. It is also for your life experience. Strength and toughness of a man is built on experiences and actions and going through hardships. Besides, she added, I was out of options and needed help. You were the only option I had, Mom explained. House full of fertilizer. As a young boy, I knew what poor was like. I also knew what living with all basic needs fulfilled was like, especially during the time before we moved to the United States. I knew my parents' businesses were booming to an extreme level that no one in our family from past generations could have even imagined. We moved into a new house every year or two. I often walked through our house filled to the 20-foot ceiling with stacked fertilizer, watching all that merchandise being bought in and moved out on trucks within a few hours or a day. I witnessed my parents making trade deals with their business partners 24 hours per day. People would come and go even during the hours of 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. I watched our house fill up with bags and bags of cash. At night or during the day, on a certain day, all of us children were responsible for sitting and counting money for hours like a bank teller in an American bank. I was even asked to take bags of cash to go and pay business partners. Access to cash and money for a kid between the ages of 8 and 12 was common for us, as common as bread on the kitchen table. Son, you know why I make every single one of you, my children, go through all this? Mom asked, referring to her money and business and trade conversations and deals. It is for each of you to know what is possible. This is the number one thing that no one, including my parents, your grandparents, ever taught me. I want you to see the business world and where it can take us even when you do not understand it. Seeing things happen is a great learning experience. Hard work, son. Hard work is what I want you to see in your parents, along with how we deal with money. Mom was very specific about money with her children. We always had access to a house full of money, and she allowed us to learn to use it, control it, and conduct business with it. When you know how to make money with your sweat and hard work, you will know how to protect it. You will know how to value it, and you will know how to control it and be responsible. Sure enough, being surrounded by money all the time, my sisters and I never wasted it. We never bought extravagant items, purchasing only the things we needed. We were frugal enough to not dare buy the foods that we loved to eat at certain times. Mom knew this and made sure that at night the table was full of what we loved to eat. I grew up knowing the importance of money as a tool, and that what we did with it mattered. Moving from this life to a new empty-handed life once again in the United States frustrated my mom a great deal. Moem and I walked to the dumpster, the number one reason I am who I am today. Mom, it's not like we never slept on a dirt floor before. We were dirt poor, and I used to sleep on the ground in our mud hut. How hard can it get? We can handle this and sleep on the floor without a mattress. I tried to comfort Mom about not having a mattress for us to sleep on, but more importantly, I was trying to avoid the activity of digging through the dumpsters. I realized that poor was not the point, now that I reflect on and understand why I hesitated. I meant what I said about being poor, and it was truthful, and it would have been totally fine. However, I was uncomfortable digging through trash. As poor as we had been in the past, there was never a time that we dug through trash hunting for items. First, Vietnam was and still is a third world country, and especially in a poor village like ours, there was no government agency that picked up trash, nor did the people pile their trash in one place. Second, poor people's trash in Vietnam would never have generated anything worth taking. Third, the idea of digging through trash is the lowest of the low in our mindset, and it is hard to fathom. At the age of 12, I already knew how this would affect me in terms of my self-esteem and perceived status in life. There could have been nothing worse for me at that moment in time. This was the pivotal point that made me who I am today. Firmly and carefully, Mom stated, "No, son. At the least, my children will have what other children have, even if it is of the worst quality, in this case, a mattress. I will not settle for less than this," she responded to my hesitation. Today, as I write this book, I now have 3 children of my own, ages 5, 6, and 7. As a parent, I strongly feel what my mom meant at that moment. Her love for her children and family has always surpassed her fear of self-doubt, public criticism, and people's thoughts of her. Most importantly, she was determined to make the best out of a bad situation, and she knew what that minimum was, a mattress. That was her driving force, her only thought, and nothing could stop her from achieving that goal. I learned self-determination from Mom, and the level of this became explosive when her children's interests were concerned in comparison to the norm. Not having a mattress was not an option, and so I tagged along with Mom to the dumpster. The dumpster was a few blocks from our house, and Mom and I walked there in the cold weather. There was even light snow falling. We were both lightly dressed, wearing our tropical layered clothes, but we did not feel physical discomfort, only the mental heaviness of what we were about to do, dig in the dumpster. For the first time in my life, I felt like an adult man at this age of 12. I was on a mission with Mom, for something that we would hopefully only have to do once in our lifetime. I felt a strong sense of determination that I inherited from her, and this made me happy. I also began to recognize at this exact moment who I must become, a man of the family with a strong level of determination and will to protect my family at all levels. There was no shame, no hardship, and no criticism that would interfere with the focus we had on our family, as Mom and I walked to the dumpster. "There it is, son. Get in there and pull it out for me. I will pull it and you push from inside." Mom directed me to the dumpster where the dirty mattress was. It was wet, heavy, dirty, and stained gray. It smelled of trash and urine. I no longer hesitated and put forth all my effort to get the mattress out from the dumpster and drag it to the temporary home, which we would soon have to exit and move into the Americana apartments. I accomplished something significant for myself, my mom, and my family, and I felt quite satisfied. We did it. Our family now has a mattress. Mom exhaled with a smile and seemingly lightened heart. The will of God. Unexpectedly, our Vietnamese translator from Catholic Charities came over to the house where my mom and I stood after our accomplished mission. The translator looked at us and glanced at the dirty mattress and spoke, "Catholic Charities has decided that this temporary house that you are staying in now will no longer be used for this purpose after your family leaves. Therefore, they will throw away everything in this house after you leave. You are free to take anything you need to the Americana apartments." "Anything and everything we can use?" Mom asked the translator. "Yes, but not only that. Catholic Charities will provide the movers with trucks to help you move them into your new location, since they would have to throw all these away anyway." "Isn't this the will of God, son?" Mom asked me when retelling this story. "Son, remember God will never give you more than what you can handle." She taught us about faith in God. But also know that life is about giving all the effort you can by maximizing your brain and physical strength for good, then God will take on the rest. I gain greater comprehension of Mom's teachings as I grow and live through life's challenges. I can only recognize God through doing, not sitting, praying, or waiting for things to happen. Only when I maximize my God-given capability can I say, "God, now you do your magic based on what I did." God never seems to never fail me and my family.